Good evening from the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Nobody wants an election, according to the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak is not going early. And actually, that chimes with what I'm sensing here in Manchester. It doesn't feel like the final conference before an election. But at the same time, it also doesn't feel like your run-of-the-mill mid-term conference either. Something quite weird is going on, and I've only just worked out what I think it actually is. Because it seems to me that people here aren't thinking about the next election. They're thinking about the one after that. In the battle for the soul of the Conservative Party, one side is on the ascendancy, the populist right. By far the biggest moments in the conference hall came today when the Home Secretary Suella Braverman gave her speech to a packed audience. She warned of a hurricane of mass migration. She lambasted politicians for being too squeamish of being labelled racist for tackling it in the past. The Human Rights Act, she said, should be renamed the Criminal Rights Act. Pretty punchy stuff. And I'm going to call a spade a spade. This was a leadership pitch. Policy aside, I was struck by how much Suella Braverman has improved as a public speaker. She's been putting in the hours. She's serious. The audience in the hall, well, they loved it. Well, maybe apart from the man currently doing the job that she's after. How does the Prime Minister deal with the threat from his own party? Our political editor, Beth Rigby, sat down with Rishi Sunak earlier.
Prime Minister, your brand is for competence, but this conference has seemed chaotic, cancelling high-speed rail link to Manchester while actually holding the conference in Manchester, a cabinet minister freelancing on tax cuts, a former Prime Minister and senior MPs openly criticising your whole approach. This was meant to be the Rishi reset, but it's turning into the Rishi shambles.
I just don't agree with that characterisation of it, Beth. I've been out and about for the last few days. I'm seeing hundreds of people. It's not what I'm hearing from them at all. Actually, you know what? People have got a spring in their step because they really support what I've done on net zero, taking a different approach to meeting our targets, but in a more proportionate and realistic way. So that's what's going on at this conference, and people are actually right behind it.
I've done a lot of conferences, and it is chaotic. I had the West Midlands Mayor impromptu press conference saying yesterday to a bunch of journalists, you have to bloody stick to your word, as he put it on HS2. He was really upset. That's chaotic. That's not controlling the narrative.
I know. I just disagree with that. I'm prepared to do what I believe is right for the country, and I did that on net zero. So you think the Rishi reset's going OK here? Yeah, look, as I say, I'm prepared to do things differently. I have a different approach to politics. I think people are tired of politicians who are talking about things, focused on the easy way out, short-term decisions. I'm about doing things differently, and that's what you've seen from me on net zero. That's what you'll see from me going forward.
You're about to announce the cancellation of the HS2 line from Birmingham to Manchester. I listened to you this morning. I've listened to all your interviews saying that you need more time to assess the case, but that's not true, is it? You've personally made up your mind.
I approach all these things carefully, thoughtfully, rigorously. Of course we should. Everyone watching, this is their money.
You made up your own mind?
Tens of billions of pounds.
But you've made up your mind.
I approach these things carefully and as I should do. Tens of billions of pounds of taxpayers' money. Of course we should be careful about that, making sure that this is spent right.
You've decided to cancel that section and you're not being straight with people, and you've personally made the decision. You might not have signed it off, but you've personally made the decision and you won't actually tell people, and they're watching this. And Beth, not being straight with them.
People can watch and make up their own mind. I think it's right that I'm not going to get forced into making premature decisions, not on something that's so important, that costs this country tens of billions of pounds.
Another point of tension, someone having a good week and enthusing the party members is your predecessor, Liz Truss. I was at her event yesterday, packed room. Are you pleased that she's come to conference? I remember you had the decency not to turn up to hers last year.
We're a broad church, we're a Conservative party, people are together. But look, I'm out and about talking to hundreds of my members, all very supportive of what we're doing on net zero, all very supportive of what we're doing to support towns around the country.
But we're at Conservative Party conference. Liz Truss is talking about tax cuts. The party still loves her. It seems to be more than they love you. Does that sting?
No, gosh, no. You have a totally different version of what's happening.
Do you not care?
I had this debate with everyone last summer. My views on this are really simple.
And you lost last summer.
And I'm sitting here as Prime Minister talking to you today. So
with no mandate from the members.
That should tell you where we are.
The point is, at this conference, you are a man without a mandate. You haven't got a mandate from the country. You haven't got a mandate from your own party. You're now making huge decisions about scrapping part of HS2 without anyone apart from a core of your own MPs giving you this job. If you were really serious about the long term, why don't you just go to the country?
Because that's not what the country wants. That's not,
they don't want an election.
I go out and about every day. That's not what anybody wants. What people want is the politicians making a difference to their lives. Right, so I made a big decision on net zero. I think the British people are completely and squarely behind my approach to net zero. They think it's the right long thing for the country.
You're afraid of an election because you'll lose.
I'm just getting on and delivering for people.
Next party conference, will you still be here as Prime Minister?
Yeah, we've got lots to get on and deliver.
OK, so you're going to be Prime Minister after the next election?
Of course, I'm working very hard to deliver for the country, Beth.
OK, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Prime Minister maybe coming across as a little bit tetchy at times during that interview with Beth, I think it's fair to say. And why? Well, today's narrative was supposed to be about pitch rolling ahead of his speech tomorrow. But not for the first time this conference. The planned narrative has been overshadowed by a woman on the right of the party. On Monday, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss distracted attention from the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. Well, today, the big distraction was the Home Secretary. Suella Braverman's speech to conference was billed by aides as Suella Uncuts, and it didn't disappoint. She said her party had to raise its game on controlling immigration, and her language was pretty strong. Definitely. And also, she was suggesting that without tougher controls, billions of people could come to the United Kingdom.
Now, one of the most powerful forces reshaping our world is unprecedented mass migration. The wind of change that carried my own parents across the globe in the 20th century was a mere gust compared to the hurricane that is coming. Because today, the option of moving from a poorer country to a richer one is not just a dream for billions of people. It is an entirely realistic prospect.
Well, she also took aim at the Labour leader Keir Starmer, labelling him woke.
Our secret weapon is Sir Keir Starmer. You see, the British people have no enthusiasm for Sir Keir Starmer. They know that he believes in nothing. They know that he will say anything to anyone and then change his mind at the first sign of trouble. Keir Starmer lacks the personality to lead this country effectively. Imagine what would happen if he became Prime Minister. Tory beliefs would reign supreme. Britain would go properly woke.
However, the speech didn't go down well with everyone. One delegate, who was later revealed to be the London Assembly member Andrew Boff, heckled and he was bundled from the hall as a result. You can see him there, the security moving in. We can bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby. We've just been hearing her interview with the Prime Minister earlier. I mean, it wouldn't be a conference without a protester, would it, Beth?
No, but I have to say I was standing right by him and he wasn't really heckling. He was sort of speaking out and he said, this is rubbish, and then he said that he thought it was homophobic. But he wasn't heckling in the sense that he was trying to disrupt the speech. But he got bundled out really quickly.
It's quite heavy-handed
in fact, Suella Braverman has tweeted that they were, what she says, silly remarks by him, but she thinks that he should be let back into conference. I don't know if he's been expelled from the whole thing, but it was pretty heavy-handed for someone that I wouldn't say was trying to disrupt. I think he was rather annoyed and began to speak out, but to himself more than to the crowd.
I'm keen to get your thought on the conference, Beth, because you spoke with the Prime Minister, you spent time with him this morning. We've seen, of course, Suella Braverman's speech to a packed hall. What was your sense of the position of the Prime Minister today?
Well, I think when you ask the Prime Minister or you ask his team and his loyalists, they will say that the announcements on green energy and net zero have gone down well in the country and the party, and they have a kind of tail-up attitude. The Prime Minister certainly seems to feel that he is on track. He doesn't seem to acknowledge some of the problems around him, but it's almost like they're in a bubble, and then in the rest of conference we're experiencing something quite different. And you and I have done a lot of these, and I think it's been chaotic. I think that's fair to say. In terms of the narrative and control, he's lost the narrative on his main policy announcement, which is HS2. He's got a former Prime Minister trying to destabilise from the sidelines and attracting big crowds, talking about a tax agenda, which senior politicians are going on air to talk about too. You've got a Cabinet Minister freelancing on tax cuts before an election, and you've got what is clearly a divided party, with a wing of the party in there absolutely loving what Suella Braverman is saying. I've got a Sky News break on my own phone.
News never stops.
You've got Suella Braverman in that hall speaking to the party faithful, and they like what they hear. And I was in there, and it reminded me that Rishi Sunak did not win with the party membership. They liked Liz Truss, and they liked Suella Braverman. In fact, I spoke to a Cabinet Minister about the speech, and they said to me it was a clear leadership pitch. They said to me the Prime Minister needs to take back control of this conference, reassert his authority tomorrow and make this announcement-heavy speech that we're expecting, in which he needs to get onto the front foot, Sophie, I'd say, after bumpy through days. I mean, what do you think? Have you found it chaotic?
I think I found it quite chaotic, yeah. I think I found it quite buzzy. You know, I didn't necessarily think it would be as, you know, there's lots of ideas fizzing around, but they're not necessarily controlled by number 10.
No, and I think on Economy Day, as we were saying yesterday, Hunt was completely derailed. And today he's done all of his rounds, and the person stealing the show is Suella Braverman, who has an eye on the leadership. And that was a wide-ranging speech. She wasn't tackling the Shadow Home Secretary. She was taking on Keir Starmer like a leader might do.
Very good point. Beth, thank you very much for the analysis. Now, I just want to bring you a little bit of breaking news now that I've been hearing tonight. Just as I was about to come on air, it's about HS2. Now, of course, the saga of what's happening to the route north of Birmingham and whether it's going to continue to Manchester has overshadowed this week's conference, and leading the government to insist that they're not going to be rushed into a decision. No final decision taken, I'm told. Well, I'm hearing tonight that the line will go to Euston. There have been speculation that it would not go on from Old Oak Common, which is in West London, but it will go to Euston and then to Manchester, but with the important proviso that it will go to Manchester on the old existing line. So you have the fast train on the fast lane to Birmingham. It will then switch to the existing West Coast Main Line tracks to Manchester. What I'm hearing, we'll hear, of course, more from the Prime Minister tomorrow. We can get some reaction to that now with the Secretary of State for Science and Technology, Michelle Donelan. I just want to talk to you about this HS2 line. Would that satisfy you if you can go from Euston to Birmingham on the fast train and then go on the existing track to Manchester?
I think at this stage this is still speculation. We've heard lots of speculation throughout the week, and the Prime Minister has been very clear today that he's somebody that bases his decisions on evidence, that it's important that we do take stock, and this is a massive infrastructure programme. And I know, having worked around the cabinet table with the Prime Minister, that he is somebody that is so thorough when it comes to the detail. And so I think I'm going to give him the time and wait and see what he says tomorrow.
It sounds like a bit of a fudge. I mean, if it's on this sort of slow track, putting more pressure on that track, then it's not high-speed rail to Manchester, is it?
But there hasn't been an announcement yet, so we don't actually know what the Prime Minister is going to say. We don't know what the plan is. We don't know exactly how that's going to work. So I think I'm going to wait until he reveals the details rather than delve into the hypothetical.
Andy Street, the Mayor of the West Midlands, on the programme yesterday, saying that it was effectively a betrayal. He said it was laughable, the idea that we can't build a railway line.
But again, that's commentary on an announcement that hasn't actually been made.
It would be helpful, wouldn't it, though, if you could just say what's going on? I don't understand. Why isn't he... I mean, it's leaking out all over the place. I genuinely, it looks a bit chaotic. Why don't you just tell us what's happening?
Well, the Prime Minister answered this direct himself today, didn't he? So he said, look, he's the one that's making the decision at the end of the day.
He's made the decision,
but he wants to... No, he said that he wouldn't be rushed on the decision. I think that was his exact quote, because he wants to ensure that he gets it right. And surely that's what we want from a Prime Minister. We want somebody that's going to review the evidence, review the facts, and make the right decisions.
What's your own view?
What's my view? Well, I'm not privy to all of that evidence. The way that I do politics in my own department is I try and base it on the evidence myself. So if I was the Prime Minister, I'd be doing exactly what he's doing. I'd be asking a lot of questions and looking at exactly what is in the best interests of the British public and the British taxpayer.
OK. Let's talk about something that has happened. Suella Braverman, speech today, Home Secretary, she warned of a hurricane of mass migration. I mean, she's previously talked to swarms of people. Are you comfortable with that language?
I think that every time I knock on a door in my constituency, very, very often, this topic of illegal immigration is coming up. It's one of the top priorities of the British public. I'm not in a red wall seat, and yet it's coming up again and again because people are saying, look, they want it dealt with. It's not fair. And I think fairness is in our DNA, isn't it? We are happy to help those who desperately need help, absolutely. But we shouldn't be happy to help those that try and cheat and abuse the system.
At the same time, though, and look, I accept, there's a debate about mass migration, that we're seeing people moving around the world in ways that we haven't before. But I'm talking about the language specifically. Some would say it's quite dehumanising. It's almost scaremongering.
I don't think that's true. I mean, it's not scaremongering. It is a fact that there is a great deal of people every year, and it has been on the increase. Obviously, we've got it down by 20% this year, but before that, it was increasing, that are cheating the system, trying to get into the country after being in a safe country. Often these people are actually economic migrants. They're not genuinely in need, when there are other people that are genuinely in need. And what I always think is that every place that is taken up by somebody that doesn't need it is at the expense of somebody who does need it.
I have to say, listening to the Suella Braverman speech, the hall loved it. She got a huge standing ovation. Her speaking style, it seems to me, has dramatically improved. I mean, it sounded an awful lot like a leadership pitch. Beth was just saying, she's not taking aim at the Shadow Home Secretary, she's going for Keir Starmer.
Well, look, I spoke about Keir Starmer in my speech. I think practically every cabinet minister spoke about Keir Starmer in their speech, as well as our own agenda and our own policy.
She's pitch rolling though, right? Come on, you know it, I know it, everyone knows it.
No, what I know is that we've got a very competent Prime Minister who is delivering on the things that are coming up, certainly on the doorsteps in my constituency, and the topics that have been raised here in this conference.
Is it useful for a very competent Prime Minister when there's no vacancy for people to be effectively pitch rolling for leadership?
I'm not convinced she's doing that. She's Home Secretary. She's made a powerful speech on immigration. That is her job, and that is what you would expect her to do.
Rishi Sunak told Beth Rigby that nobody wants a general election now. Do you think that's right?
Yeah, definitely. We've got a lot to deal with. What people want is they want support throughout the cost of living crisis. That's what we've been delivering. They want us to tackle things like immigration. They want us to tackle things like cutting inflation. That's exactly what we're on track to do. An election, as we all know, would be a massive distraction from that. It would stop the government from delivering and getting on and supporting people.
My other sort of thought is, after spending like a few days at the Conservative conference, it feels like there is a battle for the soul of the party going on. We've got Suella Braverman, you've got Nigel Farage doing karaoke with Priti Patel.
I'm afraid I missed that. I'm a bit disappointed I missed that.
Yeah, I know. We'll show it. Don't worry. We'll show a bit of it later. It's quite exciting. Do you accept that the Conservative Party has shifted to the right?
No, we've always been a broad church. Always. That is the very nature of our party, and that's why we're effective. We're effective in government because we look at things from different perspectives and we work together.
There has been a shift to the right, though. If you look at the language, in the speech today on migration, on other policies as well, and then you also see someone like Nigel Farage, boogieing it on down with the kind of former Home Secretary.
Well, let's be clear, Nigel Farage is not a member of the Conservative Party. He is here at the conference, but he's not a member of the Conservative Party. So I think we should be clear on that. We're a broad church. We've always been a broad church. I dispute the fact that we're shifting in any way to the right. I think what we're showing is we're showing common sense policies that people want, just like we did on the Green Agenda the other day. We're listening to people and we're in touch with what they're asking us to do and we're actually delivering.
OK, and just finally, can I ask, like a really stupid question. You did your speech at conference today and you spoke about the slow creep of wokeism. What is wokeism?
I think that's a good question. So my definition, and this isn't probably the same as everybody's, but I think of it in two buckets, if you like. So the first bucket is the denial that facts are facts, and that this claim that facts are open to interpretation, which was what I was saying we're trying to deal with, because I'm the Minister for Science, and I believe that a Conservative government should be standing up for facts and scientific integrity and rigour. And then the second bucket is this almost movement where people believe that their values and their opinions are above everybody else's, and that they can enforce them and silence out other people's views. And that's something that I tried to deal with when I was Higher Education Minister with the Freedom of Speech Act.
OK, really interesting to talk. Thank you very much for coming on the programme today, Michelle Donelan there. Now, we will get some reaction from Nicky Morgan and James Starkie in just a moment. But first, I just want to show you this. This is the Conservative mayoral candidate, Susan Hall. She was asked today about comments she made that Jewish people in London should be scared of the London Mayor, Sadiq Khan.
Why did you say that Jewish people are scared of Sadiq Khan?
I didn't say that.
You said that Jewish people are frightened of Sadiq Khan.
No, I didn't say that. I said Jewish people are frightened on our streets, and I will never apologise for standing up for the Jewish community.
Do you regret your choice of words you made yesterday?
I regret people misunderstand what I say. That's what I regret.
So to confirm, you didn't say that Jewish people are frightened of Sadiq Khan?
I've answered that, haven't I?
Right, let's bring in, shall we, the former Conservative Cabinet Minister, Nicky Morgan, the former Home Office Advisor, James Starkie. Great to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Can we talk about HS2 first? Because we're hearing that it's going to be, you know, fast train from Euston to Birmingham, then you'll switch onto the existing line to Manchester. Is that a fudge?
Well, it's quite difficult to see how running on existing tracks, anyone who's travelled on the West Coast Main Line is going to classify as high speed. I mean, one of the challenges of this whole issue has been that, of course, the whole matter has become public because of a document that's photographed in Downing Street, much earlier than Downing Street or the Prime Minister's office would have wanted it to become an issue for debate. We don't have all the details. I would be very surprised if there isn't an accompanying offer of better transport links for the North and the Midlands, more investment in existing rail lines so that they are upgraded. And so that's the difficulty with tonight. It's difficulty for all ministers sitting here tonight is because it's all speculation, potentially half a story. We'll hopefully know more tomorrow.
Yeah, I think you might be right about the speech having a big old, you know, bump for other existing transport links. James, what do you make of all this?
I mean, I think it's a tricky one, as you said, once it leaks out. And I guess at that point, I think there's two kind of big points for me. One, they've got a decision to make. If you do go out and say, well, it's leaked, a bit like they did with net zero, and say we're going to just own this and set the narrative, because that's a problem that's happened now.
And that worked quite well, right?
That worked well.
For them, strategically.
The problem is, I think it's part of the PM's big set-piece speech. So if you take something you've worked on for weeks and weeks and months, and something like this would have had to have gone through the OBR, so it's a complex process, they then have to find a whole new announcement for the speech, and people say, oh, well, there's nothing in the Prime Minister's speech, you know. So I think it's not as easy a decision as it maybe looks.
That makes a lot of sense. I want to talk to you a bit about Suella Braverman as well. Was that a leadership pitch?
I think all ministers who are ambitious for the top job, this is the week, isn't it, in which if you're going to create an aura, an atmosphere with party members, you're going to take the opportunity with both hands. It was interesting hearing what you were saying about you thought that she had really come on leaps and bounds and how she was speaking. The hall was apparently packed. I wasn't there, but I'm told it was very, very busy. So you know, this is a big moment for her and for other ministers, particularly those who might not have spoken from the stage before.
Yeah, I did feel that. And like putting the policies to one side, and everyone will have their different opinions on the content of the speech. But the way she spoke, I just thought it's transformed almost.
I think the tricky thing is, if you're looking at an election where you think the Conservatives might not win, then anything can be seen as leadership.
Yeah.
I think what is clear is that with, you know, let's be honest, if you're looking at the polls, it doesn't look good. I think what is clear is there's a fight over more broadly, which maybe we'll touch on later, over more broadly about the heart of the party. Where is it? And we've seen a One Nation Day recently in the last few weeks. We've seen new groups launched, like the New Conservatives. And I think, yes, they want to set where Rishi is going to go for the next election, as always happens. But actually, I think more broadly, I think it's not about just individuals' leadership pitches. It's a lot about where does the Tory party go, because we've had multiple leaders, big events that have happened, and we've, maybe it's finding itself.
Yeah, and it's actually extraordinary here because you can see it playing out. In the fringes, in the conference hall, in the bars. It's like you say, the debate is happening. We'll have much more from you later in the programme. James there and Nicky. Still to come on the Politics Hub. Well, there's populism in the air at conference. One former minister, John Hayes, has said that only true Tory values can save the party's soul. What exactly are those values? We'll ask him again next.
I'm Inzamam Rashid and I'm Sky's North of England correspondent, telling stories from this culturally rich region I call home.
If the Taliban found your family, what would happen?
I think they're just going to straight away execute them.
There are issues of racism in all levels of cricket.
I was on the balcony a couple of times. I was nearly gone.
Football is a joy to watch. When people are disappointed, you can feel the hate.
I've always tried to put people at the heart of the story, like hearing from young women who've been spiked via injections.
I just felt physically sick. That's really in my system.
Men, they want to force you doing something which you don't want to do, just because you're homeless.
We give a voice to communities often unheard and unserved from a region with a distinct history and global impact.
Hello and welcome back to the Politics Hub. We're live from Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Now, the speech by Suella Braverman earlier definitely felt like one of the defining moments of this Conservative Party conference so far. And watching in the wings was the man described in the past as her secret advisor. Now, that man is Sir John Hayes, who's been a Conservative MP since 1997. And just as the Home Secretary's speech had finished, I caught up with him.
What did you make of the speech?
Exceptional, exemplary, incredibly powerful, clearly heartfelt, authentic, a rallying cry for the people. She set up the contrast between the bourgeois liberal class that dictate to ordinary people what they should say and think, and the people's champion, Suella, who says it as it really is.
Do you think some of the other politicians around the cabinet table could learn a bit from her?
Yeah. I think she is exceptional. We've got a very good cabinet, and I know many of them well. So I don't want to disparage anybody. But Suella, I've always known from the first time I met her, had the potential to go as far as she can, and she is quite exceptional.
You'll forgive me for this.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit like a leadership pitch.
I think we've got a good leader.
Sure. That's not. But it sounds like she. Would it be fair to say she's setting out the framework for what she would look like as a leader?
Well, what I think it's fair to say, although she emphasised that she's working very closely with our Prime Minister and she's very loyal to our Prime Minister, I know they are working closely together, for example, on immigration. But what she is undoubtedly becoming is a champion for a certain voice within the Conservative Party, voice of the people that I represent, and my voice too, you know, one of those voices, okay? So she's certainly established herself as that, and that's important.
Pushing out Kemi Badenoch?
Well, Kemi's a friend of mine too, but obviously Suella's a very close friend and close political ally of mine, or I am of her, perhaps I ought to say. But, you know, Kemi's got another voice to offer and another perspective to bring. So Kemi's a great person to have in our party and in our cabinet. So I don't want to say anything disparaging about her. But something about Suella. Suella's got an authenticity, a palpable authenticity, a kind of heartfelt quality, I think is quite exceptional.
Well, let's pick up with Nicky and James, shall we? I mean, he's fully on board with the Suella campaign, you can see, right? Do you think that he's right, that Suella is becoming the champion of a certain group of voters?
Well, to a degree, yes. Over the last few years of politics, what I would say, and one of my former bosses once said this to me, people go up and down. Mm-hmm. That's not to say that Suella couldn't end up as the leader, but, you know, there was a point at which I remember Amber Rudd was going to be the next leader. 4 months after that, she wasn't in the party. Then there was, you know, there'll be. I remember when I was working for Michael at one point, he was kind of top of the charts when we were at DEFRA, and everyone was like, "Oh, Michael's probably going to be the next leader." And there was a point which Boris was completely written off after he left as Foreign Secretary. Yep. About 6 months after that, people were like, "This is a crazy decision. He's gone nowhere." So I think people go up and down in these things, and there's, as was put earlier, there's a kind of sometimes a darling of conference, but. It all depends on future events, and I think a leadership election will also, if it happens after the next election, will be what's the question? Why does the Conservative Party think it lost that election? And number two, we're going to have about 60 to 80 new MPs who actually, if you look at them, are not broadly from the right, and they will be a massive factor in who they choose for that.
Yeah. What's your take on, you know, we were talking earlier about the kind of battle for the Conservative Party that's playing out. And obviously we associate you with a certain wing of the Conservative Party, right? I'd say they're kind of more centrist rather than to the right. Are you worried about the direction your party's going in?
Well, I suppose I'm worried that we are going to not appeal to sufficient numbers of voters to win a general election. And that's frankly what it's all about, in the sense that you want to be in government in order to make decisions, to carry out the policies that you think are going to make life better for people. And so I suppose what I'm watching at this conference and beyond is what ministers are going to say that's going to appeal. I just think back to being a marginal seat Member of Parliament. I won my seat off the Labour Party. And, you know, people are going to be... lots of us are going to have friends in that position, wanting to hold on to their seats. Is the party not only saying, but doing and planning to do what's going to appeal to those people? I think it's fascinating, this debate about wings of the party, because the Conservative Party, I think, like all political parties, it is genuinely a broad church. I think Michelle used that language, didn't she? And there's no doubt that it's often quite difficult to pigeonhole people. The Conservative Party is not an ideological party. There isn't a sort of, you should think this or you should think that, or there shouldn't be. And so I do worry when I hear a little bit about, you know, we're all Conservatives must now think this or must now want to agree with this stance. That's not the way that I don't think healthy political parties operate.
What's your take on this, then?
I would agree. I mean, I think that's, you know, it's why the Conservative Party have been in power so much. It's because of a pragmatism. I mean, if you take the last kind of 13 years, you know, David Cameron had to kind of almost reinvent the party to get it back into power. And then, Theresa May came in and I think articulated a kind of post-vote leave consensus, which is why I also think the kind of old right and left is a hard thing to put your finger on, because if you look at the winning electorate, probably, it's actually very to the right on immigration and crime, but it's very to the left on what it wants to see from the state. And that's the grouping that Boris put together and delivered a big majority of.
It's interesting here, because you've got your kind of campaigning stripes from the Vote Leave campaign as well. You kind of know how to get these groups of people, and perhaps I think the analysis about right and left not quite being as we would have seen it previously is quite interesting.
And I think you're totally right that voters don't see themselves in those terms. They see there's an issue, transport links, health of the local schools. Is the NHS going to be looking after me and my family? And that's what politicians and current ministers have got to be able to answer those questions, basically.
Really interesting. We'll have more from you later, James and Nicky. But still to come on the Politics Hub, we're going to be speaking to the former Cabinet Minister, Nadhim Zahawi, about Suella's speech, Rishi's reset, and the future of his party. Stay with us. Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. We're live from Conservative Party conference in Manchester. Well, a little earlier today, I spoke to the former Education Secretary. He's also a former Cabinet Office Minister, former Vaccines Minister, and not to forget the former Chancellor for 48 hours, Nadhim Zahawi. Now, with all of the focus on HS2, Suella Uncut and the Rishi reset, I asked him about what he wanted his party to talk about.
I've been talking about inheritance tax, which is, I think, an unfair tax. At the right time, I hope the Prime Minister and the Chancellor will look at it. At the moment, they are right to say that the best tax cut we can give your viewers, give the nation, is to halve inflation.
On tax cuts, I think that most people at this conference would agree that they would like to see lower taxes. It's a Conservative conference. But the debate is around when they should happen. Do you want to see tax cuts before the next election?
Well, I think when the Chancellor has the headroom, he should absolutely begin to look at things like inheritance tax. I'd be making that argument. It's an unfair tax. It's a death tax. People, as Conservatives, we believe that you know, if you've worked hard and you've paid your taxes, you should be able to leave assets to whoever you feel you want to.
Do you want to have? I just want to press you a little bit again. Do you want that to happen before the next election? Because if you say it's going to happen afterwards, then I mean, you might not be in power then. Can't do anything about it.
I've been Chancellor of the Exchequer, and it would be completely wrong of me to try and put a date on when the Chancellor will have the ability to cut taxes, because he needs the headroom. And at the moment, there are some headwinds. I don't need to tell you that you look at where oil prices today, and of course we're seeing, you know, good numbers on inflation coming down, but there are still headwinds. We've still got war on our continent, and so it would be unwise, certainly of an ex-chancellor, to start to be a sort of, you know, backseat driver or a, you know,
well, enough of them around this conference.
A couch analyst for the current chancellor. He will know when it's right. What we should be doing is putting forward these ideas versus Labour, which is at the moment a policy-free zone. You know, we are the ones here that are generating the ideas on how to be on the side of people who are hard-pressed.
I want to get your thoughts on high-speed rail, because we're expecting Rishi Sunak to announce that the second leg of HS2 between Birmingham and Manchester is not going to go ahead. What's your view on that?
Well, it's worth waiting for the detail.
Sure.
The thing to remember is that we have invested 33 billion in rail in the north of England. That's an important investment. It's important to remember also that actually the world has changed since the pandemic hit us, and the working habits of people have changed. So it's right to re-examine a project that is so large. And the speculation is that, you know, the cost of HS2 in totality might be up to 180 billion. So it's right. I think it's wise. You know, one of the great things that I think differentiates Rishi Sunak is that he is evidence-led. You look at what he did on the announcement on net zero and making sure that we are honest, we are evidence-led, pragmatic, and are on the side of hard-pressed taxpayers, whilst at the same time saying we can meet our 2050 target, but we're going to meet it in a way that is about delivery. He thinks like an engineer, you know, and that's a good thing.
I want to talk to you about the other sort of big ticket event today, which was a speech of the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman. In the speech, she warned of a hurricane of mass migration. She's previously spoken of swarms of people coming to the UK. Do you think that language is inflammatory?
Well, the first thing to say is I think we do live in a country where, you know, a boy from Baghdad can become second Lord of the Treasury, Chancellor of the Exchequer of this great country. So we should be proud of our track record as Conservatives, because, you know, pretty much the bulk of the past 100 years, we have been the party of government, and much of the reforms, including on migration, were delivered by an equality, it's delivered by Conservative Prime Ministers. So there's a lot to be proud of. Where I think Suella's right is the world has changed post-Second World War. What do I mean by that? The ability of people to move in big numbers, right, is very different to what it was in 1945.
I mean, I think the analysis, lots of people in your party would agree with, but I guess my point is about the language. Hurricanes, swarms, is that inflammatory?
But what will happen?
You wouldn't use that language, would you?
Well, what language is there to describe that we're going to move from a period of time where only, you know, thousands of people actually moved, migrated, to tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, of people that are moving? It is the elephant in the room. By the way, not just for the United Kingdom. When I talk to prime ministers and world leaders in Europe, across the world, it is the challenge of the next decade and beyond. is how do we come together and begin to deal with mass movement of humanity for political stability. You know, we're seeing what's happening in Sudan and in Libya and elsewhere in the world. It is only responsible, I think she's acting responsibly by saying, look, this is a real issue. We have to deal with it. We can't just keep pretending. You know, why is it that we can review every other piece of legislation in our own country and try and modernize it and bring it up to date, right? But we can't deal with issues that were dealt with very differently in 1945 than today.
I mean, it's interesting. She also said the Human Rights Act should be renamed the Criminal Rights Act. It's not the government line, is it?
Well, except you know, right? And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that there are lawyers, and some behave very badly. There was an expose a few weeks ago of lawyers exploiting both the act itself, but also exploiting very vulnerable people, making them pay money to find them loopholes in the act. And again, you know, the Home Secretary highlighting this is the right thing. We have to talk about these things. These are the elephant in the room. In a country where we can be very proud of our multiculturalism, we can be very proud of, look at the cabinet.
She says it's failed. She says multiculturalism failed.
Look at the cabinet.
Do you disagree?
Right? I think, look at the cabinet, right? Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, James Cleverly. You know, look at the faces around that table, right? That is modern Britain. Rishi Sunak, right? That is modern. That is something to be proud of. The whole world. And I've been, you know, talking to many people around the world. I think, yeah, we are the envy of the world in how we have been able to do you know, good policy formulation on migration issues. But this is a challenge. And she's right to say we've got to face up to it and deal with it.
Potential leader?
We have a Prime Minister. I will make this prediction for you, that he will win the next election, because Keir Starmer, all the polling, I was an ex-pollster, you remember?
Yeah, right? I do remember.
All the polling, all the focus groups, they cannot name a single policy that is attractive in Keir Starmer.
But the polling groups also show Labour's got a very consistent lead.
Because we've had our difficulties the past 12 months, you know that.
Now, you, of course, were sacked after failing to disclose to HMRC that your tax affairs were being investigated. Do you think that your front bench political career is over?
So, it wasn't failing to disclose to HMRC. I've dealt with HMRC. I've paid my taxes in full to HMRC, and I'm proud of paying, you know, very big numbers in taxation. I'm enjoying my time as the Member of Parliament for Stratford-on-Avon, working for my constituents.
Ambitions to rejoin the front bench?
I'm patron of the Adam Smith Institute, you know, making those big arguments for, you know, getting rid of the death tax, of inheritance tax. It's a great time to be a Conservative MP.
Nadhim Zahawi speaking to me a little earlier. Now, still to come on the Politics Hub. It's closing party night here at Conference. And here's Michael Gove with a message.
We all know what the final night of Conference can be like. It will never be better than this. Music, cocktails, every opportunity to meet the man, the woman, whoever, who can be that special person. Conservatives believe in bringing people together.
Yes, as the Conservative Party conference winds down, the closing parties are ramping up. They'll be drinking, dancing, and I'm afraid singing. We're talking Conservatives and karaoke. That's next.
The counter-offensive is going as planned. Is
it going as planned?
Well, as much as we can have it going as planned with the amount of weapons and the quality of the ammunition that we're getting. The steadier the deliveries and the bigger the deliveries of the armaments for Ukraine, the faster the counter-offensive can go.
That's the problem is you've regained, what, less than 1% of the ground that you lost before the invasion?
Unfortunately, that is the case.
And you only have, like, another month to go before?
Another month or so before the cold and the winter settles in, before we will have to actually pause until the springtime. And this is the sad news for us, and I think not just for us, but all the countries that are supporting Ukraine right now. It is getting harder and harder because Russia is winning the battle of a protracted conflict today.
So they are winning?
In terms of protracted conflict strategies that they're trying to impose on Ukraine and the world, unfortunately, we have to say that they are gaining the upper hand yet again. They have done this back in 2014. The lessons weren't learned. The aid was being delivered too slowly and at a non-stable rate, and this is the results that we are getting. I am a firm believer that Russia could have been stopped with their escalation of the aggression in February 2022, when Ukraine was asking for weapons through January, through October, November, December 2021, but was not being taken seriously, and when the offer on the table for us Ukrainians was to surrender to Putin's demands. It's unrealistic for these elections to go ahead. These elections will tear Ukraine's unity apart. We are a democratic country. We have an elected parliament in a free and fair election with international observers who were present in 2019. Right now, would international observers come to Ukraine to witness the elections happening in the battlefield?
But other
on the
countries
front
have
lines?
had elections during wartime, haven't they? Not least this one.
Not least this one, but under which conditions was the warfare going on the ground? How we have many questions for which we are still seeking the answers. I'm for elections. I would love for Ukraine to hold free and fair elections that would be deemed free and fair by international observers. But I, for one, am also certain that hardly any international observers will be willing to come to Ukraine to witness these elections.
Hello, welcome back to the Politics Hub. We're live from Conservative Party conference in Manchester for you. And coming up after Politics Hub this evening, we've got the UK Tonight with our lead UK presenter, Sarah Jane Mee.
Coming up at 8 o'clock on the UK Tonight, we bring you the powerful story behind Jade's Law. Jade Ward, a mum of 4, was murdered by her estranged husband, who, when he was sent to prison for that crime, still legally held parental responsibility for their young boys. Now, this was a nightmare for Jade's family. They fought for change, and today they won that fight. We'll hear their story. Now, are you happy for police to go through your passport photos? It's been suggested that to catch a criminal, police should have access to the UK passport database. This is an effort to curb crime. Send us your thoughts. Well, we're debating this issue tonight. We're on the red carpet with David Beckham at the premiere of his tell-all new documentary. Looking forward to that. And where is the best place to retire to in the UK? We'll tell you all that and more coming up at 8.
So that's the UK Tonight with Sarah Jane Mee at 8 p.m, so directly after the Politics Hub. Now, with the PM speech done, tonight's the last night of conference, and that means closing parties. But don't get too excited. The vibe is definitely less Ibiza and more drunk uncle at a wedding. And ever keen to hear the sounds of their own voices, politicians love karaoke. Now, last year's karaoke was cancelled, but this year it's back with a vengeance because Priti Patel has already burst into song with Nigel Farage. No, really. So we thought we'd bring you some of the best, or maybe the worst, sing-along moments. I mean, I really am not sure what to say after watching that. It feels as if this kind of started in an age where there weren't camera phones, and now there are, and everyone's still just going around as if they didn't exist.
Yes, well, I'm very pleased that camera phones did not exist when I started out going to party conference quite a long time ago. But Therese is legendary for her karaoke in Westminster. I think all of us are probably invited at one point or another to one of her karaoke parties. And I think you're right in a way. It's the last night. Most of the ministers will have done their speeches. And so there is just a sense of, it's a big thing preparing for a speech. Lots of, you say, weeks of preparation, clearance. And so I think people do want to let their hair down.
You going to be letting your hair down tonight?
No, I'd love to be able to. That would be a dream. But no, I think, as Nicky said, it's like politics is a high-pressure business. And, you go through the first couple of days, you're nervous about everything. You're kind of worried how things are going to land. Is it all going to get done? You've got, if you're a special advisor, you've got your boss's speech to worry about. And there is that feeling on a Tuesday evening, you'll go out tonight, and you know that it's only the PM's team then who are all stressed. They might pop into a couple of the parties this evening, but you can finally relax, knowing that hopefully, touch wood, you've done a job done well.
So Therese Coffey then, legendary karaoke singer. Have you been tempted by yourself, or?
I've been to one of her parties. I have no idea. I'm very pleased that there wasn't a video of me up there. But no, I mean they're a great thing, and yeah.
And Michael Gove as well, hitting the dance floor.
Michael loves to dance. I think we've all seen that. Yeah, great. I'm not sure. I won't pass comment on the quality of his dancing, but I think we can see he thoroughly enjoys it.
Yeah, you can definitely see that. You can definitely see that. And it's this kind of weird thing at conference where everyone is, like you say, away from the kind of normal reality. It does feel like a bit kind of Freshers' Week. There's often criticism, isn't there? Like if you see someone like Priti Patel and Nigel Farage, that's kind of blown up into a bit of a sort of social media storm. Do you think politicians should be a bit more careful, or do you think that actually it's unfair?
Well, I think most people are very careful, and someone like that obviously gets captured. And you're right. I think in the pressure cooker of a party conference, these things get magnified, don't they? And with social media, of course, it can all go viral and everything else. I don't think Priti's going to be unhappy with that.
No. Oh, really? That's interesting. You don't think so? Do you think? What do you think? You know Priti, obviously.
I think it's good. I think look, politicians are human like everyone else. People forget that. And as you said, look, in a social media age, you're not going to avoid this stuff. And I think, as much as anyone else, they want to go out, let their hair down, have a good time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think it shows them a different light.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Great to have both of you on the programme tonight. Well, that is all for the Politics Hub this evening. We'll be back tomorrow. And remember, if you scan the QR code, you can catch up with all of the latest on the Hub throughout the day. Do stay with us for the UK Tonight with Sarah Jane Mead. That's next.